Here on a very special episode of Go FUD Yourself. Today I've brought in crypto's Star Wars expert. No, I'm kidding. Today we have Leah of Rug Dog. Are you the Star Wars expert? You might be.
I could be. I know
Well,
a
I
lot.
think
It
you
might
will
be the
be
first
after
movie
this.
I've ever seen. Yeah, I think so too.
Leah has joined us before on Go FUD Yourself, but as the other half of JD, Leah and I thought that we could do a much better episode together. So here we are. We're going to talk to you about scams. We're going to talk about the $1 million exploit of global finance. We'll talk about CertX's latest report about there being over 100 million lost in April alone. And then we have some cool DeFi news. So some things about liquid staking. We have some weird blogging news about how nobody blogs anymore and how that might be an early indicator of company failure or not, hard to say. And then we're going to talk about anonymity, which is pretty fun and cool, which is a great segue into altcoins for the universe, altcoins in the beyond. We're going to talk about May the 4th. We're going to talk about altcoins and Star Wars characters. Are you ready, Leah? Are you going to abandon me for this
I am
episode?
so ready. Sorry, that intro gets me every time.
You know, neither of us wore our bald caps. So, like, who's who today? We actually have a new intro and a new image coming out next week, which is very exciting because my graphic designer obviously thinks I'm way hotter than I actually am. I'm going to start using that as all my PFPs. Like,
that's the best part. You get like a really good picture drawn of you and you're like, this is it. This is everything.
So Leah, you started Rug Doc, right?
Correct. Yes, I did.
Are you like the expert in scams and exploits? And
I mean, I hate to take like the title because there's a lot of really great industry experts out there in security, but I am certainly one of many, we'll say. And I think I'm pretty good at what I do.
Are you the only doctor though?
I probably am. I probably am. Yeah, I would assume I'm probably the only person who like actually is a doctor in this field.
Okay, well, before we get into the actual news, I have a couple of really layman questions for you. So when you read this news, they talk about exploits, exit scams, hacks, rug pulls. To the average person, how should we differentiate between these scams? Like, are exploits primarily institutional and rug pulls are real? Which ones matter?
Sure. So I think it's all a little bit subjective, how you want to define these things. It's not like there is a dictionary definition for all of these different elements. But generally, I would say a rug pull is going to be some form of a scam that hits you usually in DeFi or crypto, where the rug is pulled out from under you and you are left with a loss that you were not anticipating. Something seemed really good and you were all for it. You thought you were going to make a good, sound, interesting investment, and it turns out that is not the case. So, sorry, maybe I shouldn't have. Are we? Okay, it's fine. So anyways, are we live or are we like?
We're live-ish, but then we'll clip it out later.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. So I would say a rug pull is going to be something where like the rug is pulled out from under you and you are expecting to make some sort of a really sound investment that it just does not turn out to be. Some sort of a scam happens and you're left with a loss. A scam can just be kind of anything, right? This is more anything from your crypto is completely stolen from you all the way down to, your Nigerian prince sort of a scam where you may be phished for something or someone just gives you false promises of a payment that's never going to come. Or it can be anything down to, that's just the broadest one. Like a scam is just something bad that happens. Whereas I think a rug pull is a little bit more specific, dealing with like DeFi where you're investing in something or you think you're investing in something and due to a contract failure that is taken out from under you. And then if you want to get into like kind of the different types of rugs or scams, there's what we call like hard rugs. And a hard rug is going to be like these massive failures where the crypto is just stolen, right? Versus a soft rug might be something that is going to be you invest in a token that you can't sell anymore, or the liquidity is pulled so you can't actually withdraw or exchange your investment. So it's not a catastrophic loss, but it's still a loss, and it still hurts this crypto investor, so we'll say. And then finally, I'd say we have our exploits, where this is something that is not happening to the user directly. This is something that's impacting a protocol, but of course, it's going to eventually impact the user. So, the user is investing in something or dealing with a protocol, and then the protocol is hacked, exploited, something happens to that. And then the user gets a secondhand loss because the protocol has been the primary victim, with the users being the secondary victims.
Okay, so when we talk about these more institutional things, so some of the news articles we have coming up, like Level Finance having a $1 million exploit, we wouldn't call this necessarily a rug pull, right? This is
No.
a high-end exploit.
Yep, exactly. So, I think the other clarifying factor is a rug pull is going to be something that the protocol does to its users, right? So this is a malicious actor in the space, versus an exploit is something that's impacting a protocol, but the protocol itself is not malicious. They didn't mean for this to happen. They don't want this to happen. They're trying to be a good protocol, and someone did something bad to them. So no, this is not a rug pull. They didn't mean for this to happen. They don't want this to happen. And they were hit, with a $1 million loss. Of course, potentially some users were affected, but probably just through price action, because this didn't steal user funds. This stole protocol funds. So essentially what happened is Level Finance just got hacked. So a security breach, a hack, whatever you want to call it. And it let an attacker steal $1 million of their native token, their LVL token. So essentially what happened is they had a bug in their contract, their level referral controller V2, and it basically let for multiple referral claims in the same epoch to happen. So you know how in the blockchain we have epochs, and a block is minted every epoch, and that's how we get this ledger, right? So basically, instead of letting your ledger be a one-to-one ledger, it let multiple things happen in one epoch. An attacker figured this out and was able to drain 214,000 LVL tokens. That was then turned into BNB tokens, and they have then funneled out. But again, this didn't directly affect users. It was isolated to only this one contract. It's fixed now, like it's been fixed. They fixed it within a day. And then the LPs and the treasury have been unaffected. So it sucks for them, but it could have been worse as far as scams go.
How does this, so basically there's a smart contract, right? And people are able to claim this reward. And for whatever reason, there was a claim multiple bug. So someone was able to claim $1.1 million worth.
Yes.
How does this actually negatively impact the exchange? I know that might sound like a bit of a naive question, but they were planning on those all being claimed anyway.
Yeah, so it basically happens all at once. So you have two things going on. One, you have this giant claim all at once. So versus users are probably not withdrawing 1.1 in just LVL tokens all at once from one single contract. Things are usually a little bit more spread out. There's different tokens that are being withdrawn. And so when this happens all at once, it usually just hurts the price action, right? So my guess is if I were to pull up the LVL chart right now, I would see exactly when this breach happens, because I would see the LVL token doing its thing, and then it would try to just plummet for a hot minute. And then if I had to guess, again, I haven't looked at the chart right now, but it probably has ticked back up already to roughly where it started from, because this is just going to like plummet the price. But then things, it seems like, probably evened out because they fixed it. The community probably felt a little bit better that there was action being taken. So I would guess that it's probably just a temporary price impact versus a catastrophic loss.
You touched on something really interesting there, which is that users might already be back on board. So when something like this happens, it doesn't necessarily reduce user sentiment or reduce trust because there is a malicious actor, right? But on the other hand, this could have been prevented with due diligence, like if they had looked at their smart contract closer. Question mark?
Potentially, yeah. So this is one of those cases where they probably had this upgraded version that is now interacting with a prior contract or a new type of a contract that is not playing well together and lets this exploit happen. So it probably wasn't something that was blatantly obvious when writing this contract. It probably just didn't play well within its larger ecosystem, and an attacker realized that it had this vulnerability.
So the next article that you brought to my attention is that there's over $103 million lost in April alone in exploits, hacks,
Yeah.
scams in crypto. This isn't worldwide. This is like just in our little bubble. And that is a huge amount. Would most of this be from malicious activity such as the level scheme, or are some of this bug bounties, or what does that kind of look like?
Yeah, so I would assume probably most of it is not bug bounties. I would assume most of it is indeed malicious. So it looks like, of the $103 million lost in just April, 20 million was from flash loans alone. So this is definitely not bug bounties being claimed. This is a hacker exploiting probably year-end finance that happened on April 13th, and that was a giant flash loan attack. There was also $9.4 million in exit scams, which are these like liquidity pulls, right? So essentially, the protocol is the malicious actor. This isn't an external hacker hacking the protocol. This is the protocol being malicious to its users. And so essentially, what happens is people invest, and then the protocol pulls liquidity. Users can't take their investment out. Um,
In the
so
article, I believe Certic made the little diagrams in the article. Do check it out. All of our news
I
today is from
did.
Cointelegraph. That rarely ever happens. I always try to mix it up, but it just so happens that all of these were the best articles about what we're talking about. So, in that article, it said that the top 3 exit scams this year were Merlin Dex, Ordinals, and 6827 token. But as far as I
Yep.
can tell, there's still some pretty good sentiment around Merlin and 6827. So, are they true exit scams, or I don't know, can DEXs kind of come back from that? What does that look like?
I mean, ultimately, the market's a free market. And so if people are going to invest in something, well, the protocol is going to ultimately survive. Um, so I guess we'll see what happens with that. It's really ultimately up to the demand that users give to it.
Yeah. Do you think that there's any other really pertinent elements that we should be looking at in terms of scams and losses in crypto? I mean, this is supposed to be, I read in that article that this is the most loss in a quarter that we've experienced. Um,
Yeah, and I mean, that's something that we see in just these downturned markets, right? So, of course, when things are going well and there's a lot of bullish sentiment, there's still scams. There's always scams. There's always exploits. There's always hacks. Um, but really, you see a lot more desperation in these bear markets because everybody is hard up for cash, right? Nothing's really working out. So, it causes more people to try and basically get cheap cash. And one of the ways to do that that is more approachable in decentralized finance is by just pulling scams, like becoming a malicious actor, either deploying a malicious protocol or becoming basically a hacker or exploiter and exploiting other protocols for a way that you figured out a vulnerability in. So I think that's why I think even though the market is recovered from where we really were maybe last quarter or the quarter before, it's just this prolonged kind of wavy sideways bear market. It's just dragging on, and there's just more desperation out there.
mhm. I think this might be a great time to plug Rug Doctor because I know that you do some, I don't know if they're audits, but I know that you sign off on some dexes and not others. And like, it would just be good for people to understand kind of what your signature means to them in the space.
Yeah, absolutely. So over at RugDoc, we are a crowdsourced community initiative where we will review any smart contract you throw at us for free, and we'll do it in a timely manner. So it can be a token, it could be a DEX, it could be a farm, it could be whatever you want it to be, a game, an NFT. You give us the contracts and we will review it. And we're not quite an audit. We are kind of like a light audit, if you want to consider it like that. We're not spending the same amount of time going over these contracts, but we're not also being paid to do this, right? We're just like a neutral third party. We've been around for 2 years and we really work with and for the community in reviewing things for investor risk. We're not looking to see if a protocol is working as anticipated, which is why most people get an audit, right? Most of these
Mhm.
companies purchase an audit so it can be they can make sure that their protocol works as they intended to work. Our I is really for investor security. So we're really trying to give investors the information they need to make smart investment decisions, whatever that means to them.
One of the reasons that I really like what you do is sometimes we just need to know that other people are involved or invested. Knowing that there are more people involved means it's less likely to be a pull. Like,
I wouldn't say that. So, I mean, again, when we see these like $105 million lost in April, and of that, such a substantial portion was from individual protocols, right? So,
mhm,
Level alone had 1 million. We see Mevbots had 25 million. Like, we had all of these massive exploits and hacks. And 25 million didn't come from nowhere. There's a lot of people who invested in that. So, that's not necessarily true. A lot of people think that's true, but it's not. A rug can affect a protocol of any size, unfortunately, or a scam or an exploit. They can affect anyone, sadly. The only thing that we can do is make sure that we have really good security and preventative measures, and that we are being as smart investors as we possibly can be.
amazing. I love having you on to talk about this because otherwise it's just me being like, wow, that's a lot of loss. And having very little knowledge about what that means or like why.
It is a lot of loss, though. Like, that's a fair commentary. It's a lot of loss.
Okay, on some potentially brighter news, it might not be brighter news for most dexes, but we have seen since Chapella, we have seen that liquid staking solutions have more TVL than dexes. There was a lot of speculation that this might happen. It didn't happen as quickly as everyone anticipated, but we now have $1.66 billion of decline on dexes, but 280 million increased in liquid staking.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, there was a lot of speculation that this would happen, but now we kind of have the proof, right? So now that we've had this upgrade and, even with proof of stake and allows withdrawals, obviously liquid staking has become a lot more popular now. So, I don't know what this really means. I think there's still going to be a lot of action and use of DEXs.
Mhm.
I don't think DEXs are going to go away, for what it's worth. I'm not one of those people, because they do play a unique and important role in the ecosystem. But, liquid staking solutions offer a lot of upside and a lot of benefit. And, it's definitely something that is interesting to see finally kind of roll out from this upgrade.
Mhm. I'm actually really surprised to see this because Lido is one of the most popular liquid staking solutions,
Mhm.
but there's been a rumor that they're next on the SEC chopping block, essentially. So there's been a rumor that they've been in contact and had some of those conversations, which I hope not, for their sake. But at the same time, watching a lot of people move their money into something that they might have some forethought about its potential relation is really fascinating. I'm surprised that people are taking that much risk.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people don't pay attention to the news like that. Right. Okay. So, one, we have DeFi, and crypto is a truly international global market. So people may not be paying a lot of attention to the SEC's, absolute rampage for killing decentralized finance to the best of their ability, which they have been doing, unfortunately. Um, so, that's something that may not be crossing the average investor's mind. And then also, when it comes to even more nuanced, this is news that usually gets a little bit buried because it's so niche. Even in our community, when we're looking at these massive exploits and these massive rugs and all these like crazy big things that are always happening because it's just nonstop news 24/7 in our world, things like Lido may or may not have been contacted by the SEC and may or may not be on the chopping block. It may not reach people's news feeds. It's just so much news all the time, and there's just so much international news all the time that's going on. But yeah, that's one of the things where I say, like, it's really important for us to be smart investors, and to do the best as possible of our due diligence, and that's not just contracts, right? Due diligence doesn't stop at like, oh, did this get an audit? Oh, is team KYC? Like, that's not it. You have to actually understand what you're interacting with, actually understand the purpose of the protocol, and to the best of your ability, try and suss out the legal risks too, because we can see there's so many problems. Something gets shut down. Lots of protocols and exchanges have gotten shut down before.
Mhm. It is interesting. DeFi is in a strange place where we have a lot of believers. We have a lot of old
Yeah.
projects that are still flourishing. We have a lot of stagnant projects. But we aren't seeing a lot of that new innovation, at least in North America, because of the regulatory spectrum, right?
Exactly.
Whereas we are seeing a lot of that innovation internationally, and I anticipate that we're going to see way more liquid staking internationally too. But
I would agree with that too. I mean, just from my own team, we've seen multiple people who have moved from the US or even Europe in some cases over to friendlier countries to launch a protocol. It
Mhm.
just, they don't want to take that risk. It's something that
Absolutely.
even I've had to consider as we're considering our tokenization of our ecosystem and these like incentives to create a more decentralized security platform. It's something that every founder who lives in the United States and has to consider because like, well, by tokenizing, am I becoming a target? What happens in these cases? It's a lot of just unknown that we have to grapple with.
I wonder about that. So our next article was about how many crypto projects are not blogging anymore. And as a marketer myself, I have many opinions about this. I hate blogging, even though it's great for my SEO. Sometimes it's just sheer laziness. Sometimes it's capacity, as many teams have gotten smaller in the bear market. Perhaps they don't have the capacity to do that. Maybe they've moved over to video blogging. There are a myriad of reasons why people might not be blogging anymore, but I have actually wondered how regulation might be impacting that. Because to have a successful article, it needs to be useful, pertinent, and opinionated. And it's not exactly a safe time to have an opinionated blog in the States.
Yeah, I'd agree. Also love the definition. Can definitely tell someone has some form of a journalism background. Um, yeah, it's true, and I mean, I've noticed that too. I can tell you that our team has even, like, largely stopped blogging. 1, because you're right, like, our team has downsized, but then 2, we're in a building stage right now. So, like, we kind of have been shifting our team's efforts to other areas because we're working on rolling out a new type of incentivized ecosystem. But I mean, we have seen a lot of teams who are in transition one way or another, whether it's transitioning from, one ecosystem to another or being one sort of protocol to another. You have a lot of these dexes or these tokens who are just like, well, okay, that run was great, but now what, right? They didn't really think past the 3 or 6 month mark as to like what their evolution looks like. So now they're having to like go back and be quiet and downsize and shift and turn into something different. Yeah, there's also a lot of just uncertainty in terms of like the politics and regulatory. There's a lot of uncertainty out there. And it's like, well, do I really want to like slap my name onto something and like take a claim? Like you may not. So there's all sorts of different
Mhm.
theories behind this. And then there's also just the fact that, a lot of projects are dying, right? So, like, in this prolonged bear market, we have projects who were fine during a market upturn, but we've seen just like crypto and DeFi in general shrink. The market in general has shrunk, right? That's the whole purpose of a lot of these raise hikes and these other policy measures. They're to shrink the flow of money moving around to stem inflation and do all of the, you know, regulatory things that different countries are trying to do in the wake of COVID. Um, but there's just less investors right now. There's just less people moving money around. There's less people taking riskier investments, of which crypto is generally considered a riskier investment. Um, so in the wake of just like this shrunk market, people are having to either figure out how to evolve or just go home.
Mhm. This article I found it was really critical of crypto companies, saying that they are very hype-based, very short-sighted. And although some of that might be true, especially when we see, big tokens or something to that end or big token launches, at the same time, as like you say, you might be rebuilding, you might not have the capacity, or you might not want to be liable for something that you don't know if you should say. And we see that reflected in who's actually leading with blogs. So BNB had almost 60 blogs since January. That is a huge number per week. That means that you have at least 2 copywriters if you are doing them naturally and not using ChatGPT. If you use ChatGPT, by the way, and you don't edit it at all, you will be penalized by the Google algorithm. So if you're trying to bolster your blogging with that, don't right now. That'll probably change in the future, but that's how it works right now. Polygon and Cardano are the next 2 biggest bloggers. Now, this is a little bit so the guerrilla marketing team that went through this, they did go through 1,000 crypto projects, and they picked those crypto projects based on the size of their marketplace and how pertinent they are, that kind of thing. But I don't think that it's a great representation, because there are a lot of smaller companies that do really serious blogging or really serious journalism, and that are doing video blogs and that are doing their transcripts and that kind of thing. So I don't want this to read as the fuddiest article that's like, DeFi is dying because we're not blogging. People just need to have other priorities sometimes, right?
I also agree. And I mean, when they were looking at like Solana, it's like, well, Solana has like massively downsized. So of course they're blogging less. Like, this is not a surprise. And you're right. There are so many projects that are blogging, tons, and new projects that are arising and developing and doing all the things. But I will say, as funny as this article is, I have subjectively noticed many times in my time in this little corner of the world that, yeah, there's not a lot of strong marketing foundations. There's just not. You have people who are just like, yes, we're going to launch a token. And it's like, cool. What's the purpose? And they're like, we don't know. I'm like, great. How are you going to launch it? They're just like, right. And they're just like, we're going to hire, somebody off Upwork to like make a picture of a dog, a new picture of a dog. And I'm like, fantastic. You're killing it, guys. So they don't really think about these things. They don't think about a broader purpose. They don't think about utility. They don't think about, marketing. They don't, other than just like, oh, let's get a graphic designer, make a token and slap a banner ad up. Like, and that's not enough. You really need, there's a reason that there's marketing agencies. It's a very complicated thing to actually boost your SEO and actually get the community to buy in and actually get your product out into the world. It's a very large world, so it's hard to navigate. So I will say, as funny as this is, there is a lot of truth to saying that a lot of people lack fundamentals that would be a giant red flag that would get you in trouble in no time at all in any other startup. We have a lot more laxity in how we launch and how we develop and how we create.
Absolutely. And to add to that, the larger companies that are blogging and are developing their SEO, let's use B&B as a great example, they're going to become even harder to compete with when it comes to SEM and SEO the longer that they're around. So there's an element of not wanting to recreate the wheel, right? Binance has a great 101 kind of series if you want to learn about DeFi, if you want to learn about crypto. And although someone else might actually have better content, because theirs has existed longer, it has a higher authority score. So there's also this element of, do you want to be blogging without purpose, right? Like, where are you actually going to compete and where are you actually going to win in terms of SEO? And with the element of ChatGPT and other AI coming forward, they are looking at actually changing how sites get crawled and ranked and how that authority score will work. And they say that there will be more content. We already know this, but the experts have agreed that more content will be produced than ever before. And we see this with every technological revolution. But I wonder if blogging will become less pertinent as we go forward and what will replace it.
I don't think it's going to be less pertinent because, okay, I mean, I've spent a lot of time playing with ChatGPT for different reasons, including like, can we use this to actually produce content? Like, can I train it on our library? Because we have extensive content. Can I train this algorithm on our content to create new content? And it doesn't work. Not if you're trying to be a technical good writer. It just doesn't.
Correct.
Will it get the basics down? 100%. Like, it will give you some sort of an article that sounds authoritative, but when you actually go through it, you realize that there are these glaring problems in the logic or the data that it's putting forward and saying like, this is true in a very confident AI tone. And it's just not true. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Like, these two subjects don't go together. Like, this, why did you put this paragraph here? It makes no freaking sense. So I don't think AI, I'm one of those believers, like, I don't think AI is going to like take over all of our jobs anytime soon. I think that it will help us in automating and streamlining a lot of processes. But I think in terms of actually creating good quality technical content, we are a far cry away from just having ChatGPT be able to take that over from humans, because we're creative and we can actually string things together in interesting ways that make sense that an algorithm may not pick up on because it's a computer and it's picking up on completely different trends than what the average human brain is picking up on.
I have to say, I don't disagree in terms of quality of the content. I've also tried to use ChatGPT to accelerate how much content I can produce, and it's terrible. I'm a way faster and better writer than it is on the topics that I'm an expert in, right? But that doesn't mean everyone's going to use it that way, right? We'll probably just see a lot more filler content that's terrible and inaccurate. for a very long time.
I have noticed that too. Like I really have, like going around on, I've been looking at a lot of white papers recently and like roadmaps and documentation because again, rolling out a new ecosystem. So I'm like going through all these other new projects and like looking through their white papers and their documentation, and the number of now clearly ChatGPT produced articles is amazing. Like so many of them are using it, but they're so easy to spot because like you said, and like I was mentioning earlier, they don't sound right. They don't quite make sense. Like they start to make sense and you're like, but that doesn't quite go together, guys. Like where did this come from? So it's clearly AI generated and there is a lot of it. Like I have been seeing it a lot more in my day-to-day, unfortunately.
This kind of is a funny segue into anonymity, but if we're using ChatGPT to write everything, will anonymity matter to the same extent, right? Because there won't actually be unique thought behind any of the articles.
Mm.
Not in
Well,
crypto specifically, just like generally digital.
Yeah, that's a little dystopian, huh?
Okay, our final one is on anonymity. So essentially the CFTC, who is usually crypto friendly as compared to some of their counterparts, has requested that we stop using mixers and that we start identifying our users. And this is another big regulatory piece that could arguably kill innovation within crypto, but at the same time could make crypto way safer, at least for Americans. So it is a really controversial statement and people are up in arms about it. One of the reasons that I love your opinions here is that you were anonymous for quite some time. And now you are less anonymous. I'm not going to say fully not anonymous, but your face is here, your name is here, we know who you are. And that's an interesting transition to make. And it's probably something people would like to learn about if they now have to consider if they would like to make that transition or move to a less regulated area.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I firmly believe that how you choose to present yourself online or in the world is up to you, right? You don't have to justify it to anyone. And there's a lot of valid reasons to maintain anonymity on the internet. There's a lot of bad actors on the internet, and depending on what part of the world that you're occupying, that can bring actual dangers into your life if you are not anonymous. So that's where I started from because I was looking over all of these scams and calling out all of these problems in the industry. And unfortunately, a lot of scams at the time and even scams now in DeFi are perpetrated by, it's not just like one random person in a basement. A lot of them are organized crime. They're just like various organized crime entities that are just figuring out how to bolster their bottom line. And so for me, that was a little concerning because I come from a professional background and I was like, well, if this doesn't work out, I want to make sure that I can like jump back into, a more traditional career path. And I also certainly don't want to have people show up at my house and, I don't know, hit me with a $5 wrench attack. Like that sounds like a bad time. So, if I call out their project. So that was my main concern. Like I was calling out scams of legitimate bad actors of whom are, people who could probably like do something that I don't want them to do, whether attack my computer or try and find who I am or come to my house or like, I don't know, show up at the dog park. I just didn't want that to happen. So I chose to be anonymous for a long time. But as we've seen the space mature, of course, there's still a lot of these scams, a lot more of these exploits, and these are still being perpetrated by organized crime. But because there's just so many of them all the time, it's kind of lost its novelty. And it's just sort of, I don't know, the price you pay to play. If you're a scammer, is that people are going to call you out at this point. It's not just me doing it anymore. There's a lot of different companies and different accounts and different blogs who will do this. Like it's a whole little like sub industry in the security industry of people who basically find scams and exploiters and talk about what they're doing. So it's just less novel at this point. So it seems like there was less cause for retribution. And I really wanted to focus down and make decentralized finance my professional career. So I was like, well, I'm going to give this little college try now and like put my name out there and like put my face out there and actually go into the world and raise and talk to VCs and talk to companies and start to figure out partnerships both within crypto and out of crypto as well. So it just made sense for me to kind of move that direction. But like I said, I think it's a very personal choice. And the beauty of decentralization is that, you can choose to be this kind of like anonymous face in the crowd, and you still have as much of a voice and as much power as anybody else out there. Um, and there are countries where it's illegal to be operating in this sphere. It's, can be illegal or dangerous to develop in this sphere.
Mhm.
So that's why I said I think there's a lot of reasons that are valid for people to maintain their anonymity. But as we all know, anonymity also leads to easy scams because scammers are not going to want to be de anonymized. So there's also, I guess, that reputation that comes with it. Like if you're anonymous, you must be a bad actor. And that's not necessarily true, but it can be true.
It's also interesting to consider the idea of where are you a bad actor? So one of the things that the CFTC has come out and said is, well, if you aren't a bad actor, you shouldn't have a problem with not being anonymous, right? You shouldn't have a problem with having your face out there. But consider that you live somewhere else with a much more corrupt government, or even that you find the American government to be very corrupt. Just because they think you're a bad actor doesn't mean that you believe you're going against virtuous activity, right? So this becomes very much a power and control element as well. And we're looking at freedom, security. I always talk about the Donnie Darko love fear scale.
Yeah.
Right. But if we think about freedom and security or love and fear, we do need to protect ourselves so that we can live on either side of these scales.
Yeah, absolutely. There's that balance, and that's why, of course, there are risks. If you're an investor investing in a project with an anonymous team, that's something that you should probably consider as to the why, or at least like try and ask why they're doing it. Um, it's an extra level of risk as an investor, but from a developer, I completely understand where they're coming from.
Absolutely. Okay, that is Go FUD Yourself. We've covered a lot of news today.
Yeah,
But
we
we
have
haven't
like that was
covered.
like
She left. She's out. Leah's gone. That is Go FUD Yourself for today. We are going to do a little bit of a Star Wars special a little bit later. It will be separate from this, but just to kind of get you hyped up for it. Look. Oh, Leah's back.
I'm back.
Leah, check this out.
Oh my goodness.
We talked about news for a really long time, so I don't know if you actually have time to talk about Star Wars, and if not, that's totally okay.
We're going to talk about Star Wars. We're going to do it.
We're gonna do it? Okay. So
yes, we're going to do it.
Our designer got really excited, so we have some cool, fun, silly things. But
So
what's
excited.
your relationship with Star Wars? Are you a big Star Wars fan?
I am a big Star Wars fan. I'm pretty sure it was the first movie that my parents actually like let me watch when I was, way small. And I lived in a really weird household where we didn't really have TV. We didn't have like all that, but we could watch movies sometimes, like special occasion movies. And Star Wars was a regular in that lineup. So seen Star Wars
That's
many,
actually
many
really
times.
similar to my upbringing. We had like a tiny TV in a corner that we weren't allowed to use.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. We had this like it was this little box, and it was like you can't touch it. It didn't have cable. It wasn't hooked up to anything, but
Absolutely.
you could pop the VHS in with the parents' permission once in a while if it was a rainy day.
The other one that we got aside from Star Wars was Indiana Jones, because I was such a little kid.
Same.
I didn't know the difference. Like I figured Han Solo was just on like earthly adventures at some point.
That's right.
Okay. I've given way too much thought to which characters are which altcoins. To me, this is the most fun thing about trying to bridge these two worlds. So the very first one, it's a little bit of an easy giveaway. I think JarJar is currently Pepe.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I would say whatever the super meme token of the day is. Yeah, JarJar Binks is Pepe, 100%.
It's ridiculous.
Which, by the way, I don't understand. It's so ridiculous.
And it's attention seeking. Did you see that Pepe holders made such a big deal that LimeWire decided to offer Pepe payment?
I did see that, and that was ridiculous. It's like, who uses LimeWire? I thought that died when I was like 16.
No, so you should talk to JD about it. They have invested tons into blockchain. Yeah, they're like maybe up and coming for music NFTs. I don't know. He's a believer.
Okay, I'm super out of the loop then. All right. Last I knew LimeWire, I was like 16 years old and like downloading things on like a P2P network like illegally.
And they made a game emulating that to help raise for their token launch. Yeah, you gotta go play it.
That's so funny. I have to.
So JarJar is Pepe. They're volatile. They're unpredictable. meme tokens are distracting, attention-seeking, just like JarJar, which maybe also ages us. I don't think youth now care about JarJar, but
I don't think so either. But it was a whole thing. It was a whole thing when that came out.
It was a big thing. Okay, my next one is Vader. Who do you think Vader is most like?
That's a great question. What's the dart? Oh my gosh. I should have known. Yes, that makes total sense. I was like, wait,
So-
who's a really bad actor at this space? Because I'm thinking blockchains now and
Yeah,
like tokens.
yeah.
I'm like, who did that?
There's a couple like storyline elements here, like disloyal following, right? People were willing to throw Vader under the bus when goings got rough, and same with poor SBF. Same thing happened to him. They have questionable actions that we don't really understand the motivations of, that we don't think are virtuous and well. But the real reason that these two are the same is that Vader and SBF are both selfish little boys with daddy issues.
Nailed it. You nailed it.
Okay. I was hypothesizing that maybe Han Solo would be Arbitrum.
Yeah, I could see it. I mean, like the hot, sexy. He's not really the new kid on the block, but like Arbitrum's kind of the block. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
Well, Arbitrum's not that new either, right? And Arbitrum
It's
got kind of
not.
like
Yeah,
frozen
that's
in
true.
time, and so did Han Solo. And they're both
Yeah,
known
they
for their
did.
speed and efficiency. My dogs. They're both known for their speed and efficiency. Some people think that they're really risky, and other people will trust their lives into them.
Yeah, totally. No, that's absolutely like a thing. And also, I mean, going back to the hot and sexy train of thought that I was on, I mean, got frozen in time, Arbitrum kind of got frozen in time, and then when they thawed, they were like cool and adventurous and like the whole thing.
Okay. I thought that Skywalker might be most like Moon River. There were big promises,
Okay.
but very tragic events.
But are they our fallen hero? That's the question, because I don't see that element. Like I don't see the hero saga emerging out of Moon River.
Okay, well, it did take like 18 movies and 12 TV shows for Luke Skywalker to come to fruition. So maybe Moon River still has time. I don't know.
Yeah, that's very true.
Okay, I really struggled with Leah. I thought that she might be Cardano because of progress, innovation. Maybe Polkadot because the interoperability is kind of like bringing different communities together. Or maybe Chainlink because they're reliable, secure, and trustworthy.
Yeah, I kind of like the reliable, secure, and trustworthy element because, I mean, I think she brings people together, but that's not exactly like, yeah, Chainlink. Leah's Chainlink.
You're gonna go with Chainlink?
I'm gonna go with Chainlink. I like that.
Okay, I've only got a couple more.
Okay.
Wookiees are kind of like Litecoin. They're capable of way more than you think they are.
That's true. And actually, I mean, I just had like a little come to the Lord moment with Litecoin like a couple weeks ago when I was just looking at charts randomly and I saw that thing just skyrocket. I'm like,
Absolutely.
What? Where did you come from, Litecoin? Wow. But it's true. They are secure. They are trustworthy. They actually do what they said they're going to do, and they are being utilized.
Kind of like Wookiees, not what you expected.
Totally. Not what you expected.
Ahsoka is a big deal because they're bringing out the new TV show with Ahsoka. And I thought maybe Stellar, like maybe XLM, because of the inclusion, the justice, the cross-border freedom. But it also feels like a bit of a push to me.
Yeah. I see the angle, though. I see where you're coming from.
Yeah. And then I couldn't do anything with Jabba or Kylo Ren.
Kylo Ren, he's not a totally evil character. Like, of course, he has a tragic downfall, and his life has these very different directions. But I think at his heart, like he wants to be good, and he wants to do the right thing, and he wants to love the people around him, but he just doesn't quite know how. And I mean, I don't want to say that this is like CZ from Binance, but I could see some like parallels to CZ from Binance, maybe. Like wants
No, that
to
makes
be
sense.
good.
Super emotional,
Maybe
responds with
super
emoji.
emotional, kind of questionable sometimes. Like you're kind of becoming a giant, centralized monopoly, which is kind of the antithesis to what you started. So I can see the parallels here.
And then I thought Mandalorian Jabba the Hutt, but like Mandalorian, maybe like a privacy token of some kind, but I couldn't think of a good example, honestly. Putting you on the spot.
Yeah, I'm thinking a privacy token. The only one that I can really think of is like K has a token, right? They
Oh,
they
yeah.
they have yeah, so like they have a token, so maybe that.
Will it be your
Maybe,
token?
but could be my token.
Okay, that is May the 4th be with you on Go FUD Yourself. Leah, May the 4th be with you.
And may the 4th be with you. I love these graphics, by the way. I can't get over it. This is amazing.
Also, Go FUD Yourself.
Go FUD yourself.
Bye.